Is Donald Trump a genius, a charlatan, or a fool? I've personally voted for the man 3 times. I supported him financially, and I volunteered for his campaigns. And yes, it could have been me during one of my thousands of campaign phone calls where I called your home in a swing state and implored you to vote for Donald Trump. But being a Trump supporter doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything that he says or does. My guest also voted for Donald Trump and he supported him, but he has some serious misgivings about his foreign policy. Now, before you jump all over me for having me on our show and calling him and I ugly names, I want you to know that we're not dealing with a common Democrat Party rabble-rouser here. We're dealing with a man who dedicated much of his life to serving our nation in a military capacity. And I think that what he says merits our attention. Our guest today, Michael Pregent, is a former senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. He's a former intelligence officer with more than 28 years experience in security, terrorism, and counterinsurgency. He served in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. He was a liaison officer in Egypt during the 2000 Intifada. He was a counterinsurgency intelligence officer at CENTCOM, and he served as a company commander in Afghanistan. He also holds a master's degree in strategic public relations from George Washington University, and he's a graduate of the U.S. Army's Defense Language Institute. Now, that's a long list, but I think that it means that Michael has earned the right to speak to us about what he sees as wrong and right. And I hope you give our interview with him some serious consideration, the kind of consideration that it deserves. I am AJ Steele, and this is the AJ Steele Show. Michael, welcome to the AJ Steele Show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, AJ.
So, Michael, you and I follow each other on X, and recently you've been posting some nuclear weapons-grade attacks on Donald Trump's Middle Eastern policy and his Ukraine-Russia policies. Let's start at the very beginning, and just so my audience has a little perspective, are you a never-Trumper, or even worse in the eyes of the unhinged left and the woke right? Are you one of those scary neocons?
Well, I'm a veteran of the military. I'm a veteran of 3 wars, so I had a front row seat to the failures of our forever wars. I voted for Trump in 2016, 2020, and 2024. So I am a Republican. I thought DC needed a kick in the balls, and Trump did exactly that in 2016. When I was a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, I testified in front of Congress on designating Qasem Soleimani, the leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I advocated for his targeting based on what he was doing in Iraq and Syria. And on the day I published 2 op-eds, one in Israel and one in Saudi Arabia, advocating for him to be targeted, he was targeted that evening. So I have been a strong foreign policy guy. I've been a Trump supporter when it comes to his foreign policy, his first term. This second term, I'm concerned that his whole goal is just to keep a war from happening on his watch. And that means the day after he leaves office is a very dangerous day for our NATO allies and for the Middle East.
So, Michael, a lot of people are going to say that you're an anti-MAGA, that you're a traitor to the cause, that you're a neocon, you're a Zionist, whatever they want to call you. What do you have to say to those people?
Listen, it's guys like me that are trying to prevent war, because we understand that when you make concessions to an enemy, you make them stronger. And once this president leaves office, our guy, it'll be dangerous for Americans. It'll be dangerous for your sons and daughters. It'll be dangerous for us when our adversaries believe they have a permissive environment to do things. Now, I want MAGA to know that when I criticize Qatar, it's not because I'm a neocon or not because I'm an anti-Trump guy. I get called a Democrat a lot. It's because Qatar is against everything you fucking stand for. They don't like the American Christian guy in a big truck with American flags and weapons. They're the ones that want to replace a church with a mosque. And I learned Arabic at 18. This is not an anti-Muslim position. This is just what Qatar's doing. So when you look at your country, understand that Qatar wants to break down democracy. They want to empower Sharia law. They want to empower people that want this instability. All of these violent protests, whether BLM was funded by Qatar. A lot of people don't know that. Black Lives Matter was
All
funded
the
by Qatar.
college movement right now that
Yeah,
we're
all the
seeing.
Antifa stuff, all this stuff is funded by a
True.
country that wants to tear down American freedom and democracy. So you should be a little pissed off at your president for taking Qatari money because Qatar is against everything you stand for.
So we'll get to that in a few minutes. And before we start that, I also want to say that I voted for Donald Trump 3 times. I supported him financially with multiple donations, not to mention the fact that I actually volunteered to work for his campaign. I like his outside of the box thinking, and I absolutely believe that his heart is in the right place. But unlike many sycophants out there, conservatives, fellow conservatives, I don't believe that he's above reproach. And I think that it's our duty as Americans to criticize him or to question him when we think he's doing something wrong. Michael, you have
Absolutely.
spoken extensively against Iran and the malign influence of Qatar. Does Qatar, which publicly owns Al Jazeera, also own our media, including so-called conservatives like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Joe Rogan? Does it own our colleges? And does it actually own both of our political parties as well?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Qatar is the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is Qatar. Qatar is its primary financier. We have to remember that out of the Muslim Brotherhood came Al Qaeda. Out of the Muslim Brotherhood came Hamas. Qatar funded Al Qaeda during Iraq, the Iraq War, funded Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, and funded the Taliban in Afghanistan. So going back to our forever wars, I'm a veteran of both Afghanistan and Iraq. Qatar funded our adversaries on the ground. And then, in a way to hedge all that, AJ, they think that by hosting a US base, they can get away with it.
Mm,
So they always say, but we host a US base. And what I like to tell people is that US base could not be used to defend Israel against Iran's rocket attacks.
hmm,
That US base could not be used to target Shia militias inside of Iraq. That US base is not, we're not allowed to use that US base to target anything Iran sponsors. So that US base was built for Afghanistan and Iraq. Both of those forever wars are over. That US base is no longer necessary. However, I have buddies that work there that are making six figures,
mm.
contractors, working for DoD and working to CENTCOM forward. And to them, it's a great place to be. You'd rather be in Doha than Riyadh because you can drink in Doha. There are
Interesting.
Russian prostitutes in Doha. There's a lot of things. Doha
There's
is
benefits.
the bar in Star. It's the bar in Star Wars. It's the Continental Hotel, and it's Los Pollos Hermanos. If anybody's familiar with Breaking Bad, so Qatar has fueled both of our forever wars. Qatar acts as a bank for Iran. It funds their proxies. Every bad deal that we've been in when it comes to hostage release, Qatar's been involved with. And the one I'd like to highlight is what's his name? Bo Bergdahl, a traitor. We trade 5 hardcore terrorists for a deserter, and Qatar uh, basically mediated that deal. And
Yeah.
and the Taliban not only got 5 terrorists, they got money too.
So, yeah, I remember that, and that was a horrible deal, of course. It sounds like our base over there is more of a liability or some kind of a leverage against us. But Qatar, or Qatar, whichever way you want to call it, is a Sunni nation, and the Iranians are Shiites. Don't the Sunni Muslims and the Shiites hate one another?
If only sectarianism was a principal position. They don't. Iran funds Hamas, a Sunni organization. Iran sheltered Al Qaeda leadership, a Sunni jihadist organization. Iran supported the Taliban against U.S. forces in Afghanistan, a Sunni organization. The Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, Shia, Sunni. It doesn't matter if the cat is black or white, as long as it kills Americans. And
Mm,
that's their mantra. And Qatar, again, primary supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood. Saudi Arabia is against the Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt is against the Muslim Brotherhood. The UAE has designated the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. Uh, there are members in Congress on both sides that want to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. And what that would do is it would address what you talked about earlier, getting all that Qatari money out of our schools. The Muslim Brotherhood playbook is to corrupt our schools, our youth. And if you look at the simple polling, how many Americans, or do you support Hamas or Israel? The majority of young Americans in universities say they support Hamas. That is because of Qatari money. That is because of the Muslim Brotherhood. And all of this just really got on my radar after October 7th when I saw that Qatar was mediating, and I said it out loud. They are an agent for Hamas. They will advocate for Hamas. Hamas will get the best deal out of any party negotiating here, and Qatar should not be at the table. It's the arsonist and the firefighter cannot be the same person.
So the one thing you haven't explained to me is what's the relationship between Qatar and Iran? Is it a financial? I mean, are they just like
They
the
share,
bond?
yeah, they share an oil and gas field, a huge one. And the only way for Iran to skirt sanctions is to have Qatar move that oil and gas out of there
There
and
you
then
go.
send that money back to Tehran. Remember the $6 billion that Qatar was holding after Iran released 5 Americans?
Hmm.
That money was going to Qatar and it was only supposed to be used for humanitarian aid. But as you and I know in your audience, money is fungible, right? So having $6 billion sitting in a Qatari bank gave Iran $6 billion back home to spend on terrorism. Qatar uses Iran to hedge against Saudi Arabia, to hedge against the UAE, to hedge against our traditional NATO, or not our traditional Sunni allies in the
Sense.
region. Qatar is a small country of 400,000, members of a tribe,
Tribe,
an
yes. Tribal.
intermarried tribe that basically brings in foreign slave labor to sustain this country.
Mostly Palestinians, right?
Well, from everywhere. When I went to Saudi Arabia, for example, I met more Bangladeshis than I met Saudis during the workday because the Saudis were out doing other stuff.
Of course.
In Qatar, it's worse than that. It's Afghans. It's refugees. They bring them there. They make them slave labor, and that's why Pam Bondi was brought on as a Qatari lobbyist
Mm,
to say that Qatar was not treating human beings like animals. And that's why she got $108,000 a month
a
to
month. A
say
month,
that
yes.
Qatar is a good country. That's $1 million gig right there to say that this the Intercontinental Hotel of the Middle East, if you follow the John Wick series, is a good place to stay. Yeah.
It does sound like the Star Wars scene that you're talking about, the bar scene.
Right.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke out against Donald Trump accepting a $400 million Qatari airplane for use as Air Force One because A, it just totally looked like a personal bribe to me, which it is, and B, let's just assume for the sake of argument that it's an innocent gift. It sure made our president and nation look like a bunch of beggars, no? Do you think that Qatar owns President Trump, or is he possibly playing his famous 4D chess with the entire Arab world, which is currently swimming in petrodollars?
No, I don't buy the 40 chess thing, and I'll get to that here in a little while. But let's talk about this aircraft. It's a $500 million aircraft that belonged to the former prime minister, who is considered the thief of the Middle East for basically supporting terrorism. He has a Beverly Hills hotel out there. He's
Hmm.
just a bad guy, a bad guy. And this is a personal gift to the president. And CNN, we're finding weird allies in this whole thing, right? I have a temporary alliance with Loomer, who I never would have had an alliance with because she's calling this out.
I like Laura Loomer.
Well, I didn't really know about her, but I knew she had influence. But I like seeing her call balls and strikes here to be able to criticize him and not defend like others are this Qatar relationship. She even called Tucker Carlson Tucker Cutterson,
Carlson.
which is great, which I
Look,
love.
Loomer has the biggest balls in the business. You may like her, you may dislike her, but she tells it like she sees it and she calls it like it is. So
And you
I
got to respect that
respect
because
her. Absolutely.
there's few people that do that. And often when I criticize Trump, I get called are you a Democrat? And did you criticize?
I know that.
You
Yes.
criticize Austin? Did you criticize Milley? And I say, I asked for both of them to resign after Afghanistan. I
Hmm.
also asked for Pete Hegseth to be removed after Signalgate because as a former paratrooper in the 82nd, disclosing operational timelines when people are going to exit aircraft or when aircraft are about ready to drop steel on target is classified. And you don't cheerlead that on signal. That's another conversation. But what I'm trying to say is I call balls and strikes. After Trump was inaugurated, Witkoff came out of nowhere. I'm like, who the hell is this Witkoff guy?
He's a
and start
lawyer. He's a business lawyer, is
started
what he is.
kissing some Qatari ass. And then you see that he got $623 million, right? So going back to this plane, it's not only the $400 million aircraft that the Qataris are giving Trump after he's been asking for one since 2016. I don't know if you know that, but he's been asking for
Yes.
an aircraft since 2016. And the Qataris are like, hey, here you go. Uh, it's the $4.4 billion that are going to go towards his son's golf club in Qatar. It's the $1 billion to Jared Kushner. It's the $623 million to Witkoff. So Qatar doesn't even need to send money to lobbying firms in DC. They have the ear of the president through his personal friends and family connection. And
Okay,
that's
so are
very
you saying that he's acting in an illegal manner? Is that what you're claiming?
I'm saying that this would be impeachable if the Democrats weren't already bought by the Qataris. They would be going after this guy. But the Qataris have already bought all of them off. We have to remember Biden's think tank, that think tank is government in waiting, where Blinken was hanging out and Jake Sullivan were hanging out, was a Qatari finance entity. Qatar's already bought these guys. I have a problem because it looks bad. So I asked the question the other day on X. So where are the Russia guys when it comes to Qatar? They're not saying a damn thing because they've already been bought off.
Well,
In my opinion.
yeah, I think it was
Toilet
Lenin who,
hermanos, man.
I think it was Lenin who said that the capitalist will sell us the rope with which we hang them.
Yeah.
Speak of Russian, but I mean that's what in some ways the Arabs are doing to us. But plain devil's advocate, and
Yeah.
again, I'm a Trump voter. I'm a huge supporter of a lot of stuff that he's done.
Right.
He's acting outside of the box. Everything else has been tried by Obama, Biden, Clinton, Bush, whoever, and he's just trying to do something that no one has done before. What about that?
Okay. I like all of that. So today I said, okay, if this is 4D chess to marginalize China in the Middle East and tilt Qatar away from Iran by having it compete with Riyadh and Dubai, I
Hmm.
like it, except you don't take their money directly to your
Mm.
company. Trump Inc. should not take money. They should put a bidding war in. Hey, Riyadh, Doha's going to give us $4.4 billion to do something here. What's your bid? Hey, Dubai, what's your bid? And have them outbid Qatar, but they've already signed agreements with the terrorist bank, that gas station of a country that is Qatar. So that's my it makes sense until you see the billions of dollars going into Trump Inc. And these contracts have been signed. So that's my issue here. How are you going to turn around and sanction Qatar and designate the Muslim Brotherhood if it'll cost your personal empire billions of dollars?
Well, some people will say that you're just advocating for Saudi Arabia and Dubai and the Emirates. I mean, why are they kosher and Qatar isn't?
Because they're not as strategic as Qatar is. They don't support the
Mm.
Muslim Brotherhood. Whether you hate Saudi Arabia or not, that's great. But Saudi Arabia doesn't have a Quds force. Saudi Arabia does the inshallah, throw money and they'll do the right thing. Qatar doesn't do that. Qatar is focused just like Iran is focused on influencing for outcomes. The Saudis influence with a existential inshallah, I hope it works, meaning God willing, I
Got
hope
it.
it works.
Got it.
So they're against the Muslim Brotherhood. That's the biggest thing. We have to remember the blockade on Qatar and what that meant back then. It was because Qatar was supporting destabilizing activities in all of these countries,
Mm.
in Saudi Arabia,
Well, we know they all hate each other. Obviously, I mean, it's a
in
bunch of
Bahrain.
tribes. That's what the Arab
There,
world is
there
like.
are there are necessary allies and dedicated enemies. Saudi
Got
Arabia is a necessary ally. Dubai is a necessary ally. Qatar is a dedicated enemy that we're treating as a major non-NATO ally.
What do they say in the Middle East? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now, you started talking about Iran. What do you think of Trump's negotiations? Is he making a huge mistake by trying to find a peaceful solution where none exists? I mean, we all know that the mullahs play the long game, and the minute that Trump is out of the office, they'll be back to enriching uranium and spreading their terrorism throughout the world. Is Trump being naive, or does he know something that we don't know?
Well, let's go back to the 4D chess thing, right? So if he's pulling Qatar away, he's basically align himself with Iran's enemies right now, right? Saudi Arabia, the
Mhm,
UAE,
mhm.
other countries, but pulling Qatar out of that and saying, Qatar, pick. If Trump came out and said, you pick the US or you pick Iran, there's no in between. You pick the US or you pick Hamas. There's no in between. Then I think we could all celebrate that, right? Because that would mean he gets it. But when it comes to Iran, I'm hearing language that's concerning. He said it the other day. They will not get a bomb on my watch, but eventually they'll get a bomb. No, you dismantled it now. You have 4 years. You have leverage. They're weak. They are an enemy not only of Israel and our Sunni regional allies, they're our enemy. They are our enemy. And, again, like I said, if Trump doesn't dismantle this now, then the day after will be very dangerous. And we've seen
Absolutely.
recruiting numbers go up, right? People are joining the military right now because they believe Trump's going to keep them out of war. I would say if you're going to join the military today, you need to get out before Trump leaves office because the day after that, that your sons and daughters are going to go to war. And we don't go to war necessarily by choice. Sometimes we have to go to war based on what our
Circumstances,
adversaries
yes.
are going to do. And if you look at the Biden administration, and I criticize the Biden administration a lot, but think about it. No war started on Trump's watch, and the day after he left, everybody made a move. And that is what's coming again. But the difference is when these countries made a move, they had sanctions and designations on them on Trump's first term. This time he's lifting those sanctions. See, I mean, look what he just did with Jelani out of Syria.
Yeah,
That
we'll
dude
talk
was
about
Al
that in a
Qaeda.
second. Yes.
That dude was Al Qaeda 10 days ago, and now he's a potential business partner. And the only way that happens is if you lift sanctions. So when I hear that, it makes me think they're going to try to float this balloon about lifting the designations against the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps inside of Iran. And that's an issue.
Well, I live in Marin County here in San Francisco, and there's a lot of Persians here. They're older Persians who left. They're dissidents. They left Iran after the revolution, and they all keep saying that, oh, Iran is on the ropes. The mullahs are about to be deposed. But realistically, there's very little resistance to them within Iran. Do you believe that Iran or the Islamic regime in Iran is in big trouble, like everybody is telling us, or is this just some type of a fantasy, a wishful thinking?
Well, they only had $4 billion of disposable income when Trump left office. And then the Biden administration flooded them with $460 billion
My
of
God.
disposable income, right? Or cash on hand, cash reserves is what I should say.
Yeah.
Now that maximum pressure is back in place, and Trump has used very strong language. China cannot buy Iranian oil. Nobody can buy Iranian oil, or there'll be U.S. secondary sanctions. They are on the ropes. My problem is it seems like this administration is going to give them another lifeline that will allow them to continue to suppress, oppress, and disappear dissidents in that country, to oppress opposition to what they're doing. This is not a country of moderates and hardliners. The supreme leader decides all.
Mm.
And the supreme leader is weak right now. And this is not the time for the administration to believe that they can send it a lifeline.
So maybe we just don't have the killer instinct. I don't know. But where does this leave Israel? Should it go? Should it just go for it and take out Iran's nukes, or should it just hand itself over to America as a 51st state? Or maybe the Jews should just pack up their bags and go back to wandering the diaspora.
Yeah, I think Israel's going to have to operate in a certain way. So Trump's going to have 2 years of political capital. The economy's starting to get better. The tariffs seem to work out.
Thank God, yes.
He's bringing a lot of investment into the U.S., but we don't know where that money's going. These trillions of dollars that he just, secured these promises from, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar. Are those only going to go to aligned, Trump aligned or Trump favored sectors?
Well, politics is
Favored.
politics. We all know that, but we're looking for
It is.
jobs, is what we're looking for.
It is. But Israel has to understand that right now the president's very strong.
Mm,
But in 2 years, he's gonna be pretty weak, and we're already
yeah.
going to see Rubio and Vance going at each other. Other people positioning to be president, but Israel may not have 2 years.
Mm.
Israel has to do things now. We're seeing the Europe aligned against Israel
Oh, yeah.
with UK, France, and whatever other
I believe it was
Spain.
Canada. Yes.
Yeah, Canada coming out with these, you know, this genocide bullshit. And the reason I say that is I've been to Israel twice. The targeting process is the gold standard. One terrorist, one civilian casualty. It's split down the middle. And when the civilians die, it's because Hamas, high value target, is hiding among them.
Of course.
Our ratio, just in comparison, our ratio in Iraq was anywhere from 1 to 10 to 1 to 36.
Wow.
Russia in Syria, 1 to 100. Russia in Ukraine, 1 to 100 to 1 to 1,000. I mean, Israel gets criticized because it's Israel. And October 7th somehow was an invitation for everybody to come out of the closet and show how anti-Israel they really are.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't give a damn about proportionality. We didn't have proportionality in Japan when we nuked two cities. We didn't have proportionality in Dresden when we
Right,
firebombed the whole
exactly.
city. You
Exactly.
start a war, you get what you get. That's how I look at it. So I don't buy any of that nonsense, but I agree with you. Israel is being held to a different standard. Do you think that the Israelis made a strategic error by not taking on Iran first? I mean, we all know that without Iranian money and weapons, there's no Hamas, there's no Hezbollah, there's no Houthis, there's no Iraqi militias.
I would have, if I was prime minister, I would have hit Iran with everything I had after President Trump won the election. That time
Mm,
from November 6th or November 5th, whatever it was, until January 20th, would have been a nonstop bombing campaign against Hezbollah, Houthis, and Iran because they're weak. And people need to know, our audience needs to know that Israel is showing us how to do this stuff. If you want to make America great again and you don't want to go to war, Israel, there was no Iranian response to Israel's response. The
true.
last response was one where Israel targeted their non-disclosed nuclear sites
Mm,
and targeted their non-disclosed nuclear sites' air defense capabilities and left them naked. It
yeah.
was the equivalent of sneaking into your enemy's bedroom, lying in bed with his wife and taking a selfie without any of them noticing
I like
and
the
then getting
imagery,
out.
yes.
That's what kind of a message it sent. I can break into your bedroom, get in your bed, and you'll never know it.
But I'm not a
And Iran has
military
not
man.
responded. What's that?
Not,
Good.
I'm not a military man. You are. Does Israel have the capability to take out Iran's nuclear facilities? Because they're deep underground.
Yeah, so it's not about getting all the way down there. It's about keeping the Iranians from being able to get down there by
Uh,
rubbling things, by shutting down those entry points, by making them radioactive in a sense. Not I'm not really calling for that,
I
but
understand.
conducting strikes, making it bad, and then keeping satellites in the air. So when you see activity, you hit it again.
Got it.
You just hit it. You just cut out the power that supports it. You identify the power that supports those facilities, the entrance points, the logistical nodes, and you just make it hard to get to.
Interesting.
You
So
can
that
do that, and you can also penetrate it as well, but you can make it, painful.
inoperable is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you can set them back 10 years, and then anytime they try to, excavate, try to recover the momentum, you just hit them again.
Very interesting. So,
Cyber attacks too. Israel cyber capabilities. They can do a lot.
got it. So, before we switch off to the Russia-Ukraine war, which you have a lot to say about as well, let me ask you an important question. You keep warning that Trump is making huge mistakes in the Middle East. But what's the alternative? Would you rather have a Biden type in the White House?
Okay, so here's the difference. The Bidens had an agenda to empower Iran for balance. I mean, Jake Sullivan, the Obama doctrine for Iran was to give it more of a stake in the Middle East, thinking simply that, the George Costanza do the opposite of George Bush thing in Seinfeld. You know, the Iranians hate Sunni terrorism as much as we do, so let's empower them to deal with things so we don't have to go to war. And
Mhm.
then guys like me will say, they actually fund Sunni organizations too. So that's not again, if sectarianism was a principal position, we wouldn't have to worry about these
But they're
things.
all in bed together, as you're saying. So,
When we're there, they're in bed together, like you said before. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? They work together to kill Americans, and that's the goal. Exit America from the Middle East. They believe that makes Israel weaker. That believes that it'll make our traditional Sunni allies tilt towards China and Russia, which are Iran's allies, and Iran gets more of a stake. So what they were doing was by design, the Biden administration. What Trump is doing is a 180 from 2016 to 2020. And I get it, the messages to Zelensky in Ukraine. Hey, work with us like the
right,
like Jelani in Syria is, give us rights to your
minerals or whatever. Yeah.
minerals, gas and oil, and we'll protect you because it's good for America that we protect an American investment. So Trump's real estate foreign policy is one where, hey, give us a stake in your economy and we'll protect your economy from invasion. The
So
problem
Trump,
is Trump goes away.
yeah, what
These are
happens?
not treaties. These are handshakes. They crumble with a new president. So everything has a 3.5 year shelf life at this point.
Trump believes that economy is at the root of all the wars. Do you think there's more to it than that?
Well, there's hate, but there are micro trends. What we found interesting in Iraq when I was there I was there from 2005 to 2010. And in the summer, if they had air conditioning and there was a soccer game on, we weren't getting attacked. So there was kind of
That's simple, huh?
that cool counterinsurgency metric. Well, hey, let's give them air conditioning, let's give them 24-hour electricity, and let's rig the World Cup so Iraq, at least competes, and we won't have any problems here, right? The problem is Iran decides what Iraq does in their energy sectors, and they chose to go with Siemens, which would only give them 12 hours of power and 5 days a week as opposed to 7 days a week. And the insurgency was pissed off during the daytime and they like to target Americans. So it's not about economy. It's about a lot of times it's about, when it comes to Putin, expanding territory or regaining territory. When it comes to Iran, their plan is to take territory.
Yeah.
When it comes to Al Qaeda, their plan is to establish a caliphate. And the one thing where economy comes into play there is Osama bin Laden said, do not establish a caliphate until you can pay everyone, give everyone a
Mm,
job, protect
mm,
everyone,
very clever.
feed everyone, or you can't establish one.
Which is
And
what
that,
Hamas and Hezbollah did in Lebanon and in Gaza and in the
the
Judah and
closest we're
Samaria.
coming to one now is Erdogan's support of Jelani in Syria. They believe, you know, there's a lot
There's
going
so
on
much
there.
stuff going on there. Now you have to throw
But
Turkey
here's
mixed
what I
up.
what I what I would throw out there. We're hearing a lot of, well, let's wait and see. Let's hope. And
Mm,
as a military guy, we don't wait and see. We put in a reconnaissance plan. We don't hope. We dictate an outcome. So that's what I'm looking for with the Trump administration. Right now, everything we're doing is based on economy, economic incentives, lifting sanctions. And again, it just looks like Trump's goal is to keep war from starting on his watch. And that makes the day after Trump the most dangerous day
yeah,
for Americans who want to stay out of war, for Americans who love our country.
it's
That's a big deal.
it's definitely a very short-sighted vision if that's really what he's doing. So let's switch topics to something you've spoken about very passionately. Just yesterday, the leaders of Britain, France, and Canada made a joint statement saying, "We will take concrete actions if Israel does not stop the renewed military offensive in the Gaza Strip and lift aid restrictions." Now, respectfully ignoring the Muslim Republic of Canada, don't the Europeans have a little war on their doorstep they should consider taking concrete actions on first?
You got to look at these countries. And I know what you're talking about. You're talking about, I heard somebody the other day, a friend of mine, or not a friend, a colleague, who's a pro-Jelani guy in Syria, saying now that Jelani's in Syria and Trump has lifted sanctions, all of the Syrian refugees are going to come back home. And I'm like, no, no, they're not.
Right.
They're not coming back
Of
home.
course not.
80% of people that leave a country after that situation never return. And these military age men that you're talking about here,
Mm,
uh, believe they're owed something in Europe and they're wreaking havoc. And they are basically saying that you listen to any of these radicals in these countries, they're saying we will supplant you, we will replace you, we are going to replace you. And remember, everybody behind you on your wall, there is an alpha male. That flag, Jim Morrison, John
you
Wayne,
noticed. Okay.
everything, right? Everything is like people that took principal positions.
Correct.
These military age males, these jihadists have not come across guys like me, guys that served in Iraq, Afghanistan. They have not come across the American that says, don't push too much because we will push back. They excel in beta male run countries,
Hmm.
beta male run cities,
Bingo. Bingo.
and they are just intimidating these, you know,
I
little
don't know what to
beta
call them.
male
Sissy
politicians.
Marys. I mean, look at Sturmer. Look at
Look what they do
Macron. My
so
God.
they're the same people that will attack Christianity and Judaism, and they'll bow down to the
Be-
angry military-age male jihadist.
because
They're
it's
gonna get
easy to
their
attack
asses kicked.
Christianity. You see, that's the issue. Christians
Yeah, we're
don't push
tolerant.
back.
We're
Jews,
tolerant.
I mean, Jews who are not Israelis don't push back, and that's the issue. They're easy targets. But where is Christian Europe? Where are the white people?
Well, they're getting put in jail for commenting on Twitter about how fucked up everything is. Can we
Tell
cuss
me
on this?
about it.
Can we cuss on your podcast?
You can do whatever you want on my podcast.
Yeah, I mean, look at the people that are getting put in jail
Yeah,
for being concerned about mobs just running rampant through the streets of Europe,
I know.
attacking Jews, attacking women, attacking.
Raping women, rape gangs all over
Yeah, so
Europe.
you and I get on say tweet. I can't believe these jihadist motherfuckers are raping our women. We go to jail
Yeah, we're the bad guys because we stand up for whatever.
because
Just
those
for
little
morality, if
those
nothing else.
little
It's not about race.
beta male, New World Order, globalist fucks don't understand the threat. They think they can appease the threat.
Mm.
And there's some weird psychology to it that men like that somehow feel submissive to these types of men, and it's embarrassing. But they haven't dealt with us yet.
Look, I can tell you, there's all kind of theories why this is happening. It's in the water. It's the testosterone levels. It's women bossing us around. Who knows what led to this? I actually, and I don't want to get into theories, but a lot of the great warriors of Europe died in World War II, and genetically they did not procreate. And who was left? The wimpy men who didn't fight. The tough men, even of America in some ways, the soldiers. And by the way, my son-in-law is very high up in the military here in America as well. So these men who died in the wars didn't procreate. And we got a generation of weasels. But that's for a whole different show. So Michael, about 3 years ago when Russia attacked Ukraine, I did a show explaining the origins of the conflict. And I said that based on history, proximity, and demographics, there's no way that Russia loses this war, and I wasn't wrong. Now, the other day, President Trump announced that he and Putin and Zelensky are having great conversations about ending this thing. What is the situation on the ground? Does Zelensky have any cards left?
Well, what Zelensky's being told that no matter what cards he has in his hand, the outcome's already been decided. That Russia will hold on to those two regions and Crimea. So Luhansk and what's the other one?
Sebastopol area? Or are you talking about the
So Luhansk and the Donbas region and
Donbas region? Okay.
those two places. They're going to hold on to it, and that's unacceptable because that means Putin won. That he can pause, he can regroup, he can refit, he can rearm. Trump's getting ready to lift sanctions against Russia and do more investment. Again, we have to remember, as much as we talked about Qatar investing in Trump Inc., Russia's doing the same thing. They're talking about a Trump resort in what's I can't forget the beach region in Russia, but there's a
On the Black Sea area? Is that where you're
yeah,
going?
yeah. I'll think of the name as soon as we get off.
Okay.
But Russia will seize more territory. And NATO, the good thing is, all right, 40 chess again, right? So, hey, isn't it great that Trump's forcing NATO to build up their military capabilities to supplant US support for Ukraine, to keep Ukraine viable against Russia? Yes, it is. But the US is an integral part of NATO, and the US should always be an integral part of that when they pay their fair share, when they do these things. I get all that. I'm for all of that. But when it comes to Putin right now, what we need to know is this is the first time. So I look at Ukraine as therapy for our U.S. generals that lost in Iraq, that lost in Afghanistan, because this is what we do. We give weapons to a capable military on the ground that is anti-Russia. This is the easiest thing we can do, and it's therapy, right? The Ukrainians speak the language. They know the neighborhoods. They are going to be the best at a counterinsurgency, and no one fights harder than a people fighting for their own country. And in this war, we've seen how weak the Russian soldier actually is. 80% of the battlefield losses early on of equipment, tanks, armored personnel carriers were abandoned by Russian soldiers. The Spetsnaz, the special forces guys, the airborne guys were killed. So now you have a conscript who's had about 20, maybe 5 weeks to 20 weeks of training, introduced into a war as cannon fodder, where it forces Russia to simply rely on what it's best at: area denial weapons, mass targeting of the civilian populace with, rockets, missiles, artillery shells, And the Russians fight this way. If we want to kill a tank on a football field, our precision weapons kill the tank. The Russians kill the football field in hopes of killing the tank.
Yeah, but that's always been their battle
Yeah,
plan. I
yeah,
mean, and you know what? A lot of Russians, I think it was like 20, over 20 million Russians died in World War II.
yeah. They
Again,
have a
I don't want to
50%
really,
acceptance. Yeah,
I don't want to
50%.
relitigate why this war got started. And again, I think
Yeah,
there's fault on both sides. I think NATO and the globalists were starting a lot of crap with the Russians, and not to
yeah.
mention Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that were stirring it up. But I've always stated that I don't support Russia or Ukraine because they're both very corrupt oligarchies. To me, the entire war, in essence, was a battle between the billionaire globalists of the West and the billionaire Eastern oligarchs, and it's all about control of Russia and Ukraine's resources. But we're in a situation where we're at. Again, Russia, the soldiers certainly didn't prove themselves as capable, but they have the upper hand. And I don't think it's because of Trump. I think it's just demographics. There's a lot more Russians, and the Russians are very stubborn. So are the Ukrainians. But, numbers are numbers. What do we do now? And let's not find a solution, that's based on wishful thinking. What do we do right now to stop this thing?
All right. So just a couple things here. The majority of the Russian people are against this war. Putin's forcing men to join the military that don't want to. If you don't join, you go to jail, right? I get that, but this is good for us. So let's take Ukraine out of this.
Mhm.
Is Russia an enemy of the United States? Is Russia a threat to NATO? Yes. And in that, meaning the Russian military is built to take us on, is built to go after NATO. And we see in this Ukraine conflict that this is a pretty weak military. It relies on threats. Putin has to say, I'm willing to use nuclear weapons in order to get a Trump to say, hey, we don't want to start World War III, do we? You cannot let Putin use that as leverage to continue to stay in Ukraine while his military can't move an inch. So what do we do about this? I think you know, Putin's going to piss Trump off. He said it a couple times already. Trump said, I'm really kind of getting upset that Putin's not coming to the table. Once that happens, you'll see an increase of weapons to Ukraine. You'll see some sanctions on Putin, and that'll force his hand because we have all the leverage. Russia is a $1.9 trillion economy.
Yeah,
We are a $30
tiny.
trillion economy. Let's put that pressure on them. Let's get them to understand this because this is a test case for Montenegro. This is a test case for other countries in the area. Putin's not going to stop.
Correct. But this is the issue that, I mean, you've addressed it, but it's basically the elephant in the room. It's the nukes. It's why we don't want the Iranians to have nukes. Once you have nukes, everything changes. Trump can supply the Ukrainians all he wants, but at some point they're going to lose this war or nukes will be used. So I think he has very limited, other than economics, he has very limited power to affect the result of this war.
Yes, we're not going to get involved. We're not going to get U.S. forces
And
on the
we
ground.
shouldn't.
We should not, but if it goes into a NATO country, we should.
Hmm.
A lot of Americans don't want to do that anymore. But the issue is we have to stand against that stuff because our military was built to do that. Our
No, we have
military,
an alliance, of course. If someone
yeah,
attacks NATO, we should. The
when I
question,
joined the military in 1986, this is something we had to memorize early on. What do you want to be? I want to be this. Why? So I can repel from a low-flying, rotary-wing aircraft in the dead of night and shoot godless commies in the face with a high-powered rifle. That's the Cold War military,
I
right?
like it.
1986. It was Russia, 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 but as an adversary, not as a political, stunt.
But can
Um,
Russia be? So I know Trump is trying to bring the Arabs into the fold now. Can Russia? And again, I understand your position on Ukraine and Russia. I understand it very well, and I don't necessarily disagree with everything you say. But I think I'm a bit more realistic about the outcome. I think Russia will get to keep what Russia took, and I don't think Trump or anybody in this world can
no,
stop him from doing that.
I agree. I agree with you. The thing is, it doesn't need to be agreed to.
So you want to keep it contested no matter what.
Yeah, just contest. Don't surrender it. You can't take it back without us getting involved, but you don't have to recognize that it's a done deal.
Well,
You know what I
that's a
mean?
fair statement.
Because the Ukrainians have the capability. There you have counterinsurgency elements that are operating inside of Russia, that are targeting key infrastructure, that are doing things because the professional military has been decimated. The
Hmm,
conscript military is what's in Ukraine. The leverage is I can do this with a tactical nuke. I can do this with a area
got it.
denial weapon. I can do this. So you just don't surrender it. Leave it
So,
contested.
so can Russia, my first question, can Russia be brought into the fold? Can we bring Russia and make it an ally of the US versus an ally of China? Is that even a possibility, especially with a weakened Putin?
It is a possibility. Remember when I was at CENTCOM during the Afghanistan war and Iraq war, we had Russian officers there. We were working with the Russians. We had Russia backed us on 9/11. Russia did some stuff in Afghanistan after 9/11. You know, George Bush and Putin got along.
Well, he loved what he saw in his eyes, didn't he?
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing is never surrender love. You know, see, this is what I would say. Hope is for your football team, your family, and your what? Football friend, your family, and your whatever. Hope is not for your enemies.
I got it.
Okay? And love is not for your enemies.
Well,
Um,
I
yeah.
agree. I mean, treat them with
Yeah.
respect. If you can make deals that work, that are not
So
perfect,
what
but
should we do to make this,
yes.
cost effective? Make this let's use economic pressure on Russia to stop.
Hmm.
Well, put pressure on China to stop funding the war because Russia can't fund this war. China's funding the war. So
Hmm.
focus on who's financing this war. Qatar is financing this war.
Really?
Iran is providing weapons.
Drones and the like.
Exactly. North Korea is providing fighters. You know, there are so many levers. You got to think about it. You're the United States. You could say, all right, let's hurt North Korea a little bit so they stop doing this. Let's put pressure on China to tilt towards our economy, a $20 trillion economy, and away from a $1.9 trillion economy when it comes to Russia. There are things we can do that aren't kinetic. There are things that we can do that don't put Americans on the battlefield. We're not even doing those things, AJ.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, at this point, Russia is not no different than a lot of the Arab countries. They have oil and gas, and that's it. That is basically their entire country. Do you think that China actually benefits from all this chaos, or is it just too busy dealing with its own financial demons?
China's the ultimate chess player. They just wait. They look for permissive environments in U.S. presidencies. The Biden administration was a permissive environment for for China, for Iran, for Russia. The Trump administration has been a permissive environment for Russia, not
Hmm.
so much China and not so much Iran. So that they just wait it out, and it's easy. If you're an enemy of the United States, you basically take a pause for 2 years and wait, see what happens. And once the president becomes a lame duck, make a move.
Hmm.
They have the luxury of sitting back and having a consistent foreign policy that's 30 to 60 years old, and we ebb and flow every 2 to 4 years with
Because
drought.
we're a democracy and they're not.
Yeah, and
Totalitarian.
so that's my biggest thing. We should not get in wars because democracies can no longer win war, especially prolonged war. If you're going to win a war, you win it in 2 years while you have the political capital. Iraq and Afghanistan were 20-year wars because we changed positions every year for 20 years. And our enemies just built the playbook and kept going forward. They used the Bill Belichick approach to football, and we were using the Jerry Jones approach post
Well,
1996.
I don't know about Bill Belichick. He has a 20-year-old girlfriend now. Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
I don't know what to say.
we always say that if the 9/11 hijackers had 20-year-old girlfriends that looked like that, there never would have been a 9/11.
Interesting. Uh, Listen, our time is starting to run a little short, and I want to get back to Trump. Just one last question about him.
Sure.
He has shown consistently that he is an outside the box thinker, which I admire. But he's also, in some ways, laid out his cards and showed that he believes in peace. I mean, he's a very peaceful, loving man, minus the tie-dye shirt. Do you feel that the fact that he did this reduces his deterrence or the deterrence of America, and in some ways, kind of weakened his negotiation position?
The day before he took office, the Middle East believed him when he said, all the hostages need to be released by the time I take office, or all hell's going to break loose.
Hmm.
And then he sent weak ass, paid off Witkoff to negotiate and squandered all of his capital with the Middle East. If Trump is a peacemaker and Trump doesn't want to see thousands of lives lost, he needs to look into that crystal ball and see the day after he leaves office and see what Russia is going to do to take a bunch of lives, see what Iran is going to do in the Middle East to take a bunch of lives, to see what's going to happen because of his policies here. Peace, if you want to make peace, it shouldn't be temporary peace. It should be lasting peace. And the policies that I'm seeing right now, and I hope I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong, are not lasting peace solutions. They are temporary alliances that will not solve permanent problems.
So my final question for you, Michael, is let's pretend you're the president tomorrow. What are
Yep.
you doing with the Middle East? And it doesn't have to be a long, drawn out answer. What are you doing with the Middle East? Let's do five things you would do concrete with the Middle East and with the Ukraine-Russia war.
Okay, what I do with the Middle East,
Yes.
I would sanction China for buying Iranian oil. I'd make it clear it's going to happen. I would keep maximum pressure on Iran. I would threaten Qatar with sanctioning their sovereign wealth fund and designating the Muslim Brotherhood or I would designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. But the mere threat to Qatar would change behavior like that. I would say I support Israel and we're going to do everything we can to take care of this. I would say that sanctions are conditional based on what happens in Syria, but we still believe Jelani is Al Qaeda. And when it comes to Russia, same thing. China, you're going to be sanctioned if you buy Russian gas. China, you're going to get sanctioned if you buy Iranian gas.
Hmm.
Just put those things in place and then watch what happens. But you have to, if you cannot make Iran an example for Russia and China, then you fail. If you can't make Qatar an example for Iran, Russia, and China, then you fail. If you can't make Syria an example for Qatar, Iran, Russia, and China, then you fail. And we're not even doing the low-hanging fruit right at this point. Anyway,
I would think that Qatar is very easy to deal with. It's an artificial nation. It's not a real nation, powerful nation. I think Iran, like you said, is kind of teetering right now. Syria, I don't know what the heck will happen there. A lot of people are saying that the Israelis helped all this stuff happen and not the Turks, even though the Turks support Jolani. It was a creep to begin with. I think you're right when you keep talking about China. China is the financier, and China is like the enemy here, the real enemy.
yeah. When it comes to these countries, I would say that if you and I were parachutists in the military and we accidentally jumped into Russia, it would be the Russian people that would save us for the Russian government. If we jumped into China, it would be the Chinese people that would save us from the Chinese government. If we jumped into Iran, it would be the Iranian people that would save us from the Iranian government.
Yeah.
If we jumped into Saudi Arabia, it would be the government that would save us from the people. If we jumped into Syria, it would be the people that probably be both of them would probably
Maybe
target
the
us.
Druze,
But when
maybe.
it comes to Qatar, if you jumped into Qatar, it would be the non-Qataris that would save us from the Qatari government. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
That's the world we live in here. And, you know, again, if Trump wants to keep war from happening, I'd like to see him want to keep it from happening once he leaves office as well in the future. And you can do that now while you have the political capital to do it. Dismantle Iran's nuclear program, divest from your Qatari investments, and sanction and designate. Use these smart tools that we have. Everybody has to operate through the U.S. banking system, and when they don't, they suffer. And if we lose the ability to punish through the US banking system because everybody uses a different currency or bypass mechanisms, then the only option left to change outcomes is kinetic.
Yeah. And we don't want to get there. Well, how can my audience learn more about you and hear and read what you have to say?
Listen, I like people that disagree with me, and I want to have the argument. I'm okay to be wrong, but I will always be moved by facts. Okay, the way they can follow me is on Twitter. Just Google my name and you'll see my Twitter handle. It's at MP Pregent. And just Google and you'll see the latest that I've put out. And I love being controversial, but I'm not a contrarian by default. It's just easy to look like you're out here on your own because everybody else is drinking the Kool-Aid and everybody else is swimming down that river of denial.
Michael, do you have a final message to the audience of the AJ Steele Show?
Hey, asking questions, keep hold your, hold President Trump to your standard. Just make sure that you don't look the other way because the Democrats lost their Latino and African American base because they took them for granted. Do not allow this president for 1 second to think that he has a base that will support him no matter what when he does things that are actually against your principles. And what he's doing when it comes to Qatar is against your principles.
Michael Pregent, thank you so much for coming on the AJ Steele Show. I really appreciate your
Thanks
opinions
a lot.
and I thank you for your service to our country.
Thanks a lot, AJ. Hope to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.